everybody, CW here. So I got a few more cases done from the last video. I separated them out. I went back and I pulled a few extras so that I got about 25 of each head stamp. And then I started prepping them and doing the whole process that you saw me do. So everything is up to, actually everything is completed now, but we're going to talk about turning them next. Everything is up to full prep right now, and they just need to go in the wash and get washed and cleaned. Get the lube off them and get them ready for loading. What I did was I measured my case melts. Okay, now this one here is going to be tough, so let's see if I can get it cleaned off a little bit. Because you want to make sure you're not measuring dirt. And then you need to get a special mic for measuring these. And you need it to have a ball. So this has a ball right there. And then a flat. So it measures on that radius, which is the inside of your case. So you put your case in there and you put it on here, and you can see we got about 10.5. You take it and you turn it, 10.5, 11, 11, 11. Well, it says 14, but it's not really 14, 13.5, because I've got this up on the rim, up on the shoulder. But it does get a little bit thicker as you get to the shoulder, because we got about 12.5 there. There's 11.5, 12, 11. So when we started out with this brass, it was about 11. After it gets turned, after it gets sized, this is one I didn't like. I forgot why I didn't like it. I put it back there for some reason. Oh, it's got a ripple in the shoulder. But it's a 6.5. It didn't go to 2.4. And you see what we're up to. 14, 14, 13.5, 14.5, 12.5, 11.5. You see how it's jumping all over? That's because that brass has to go somewhere. When you size it down, most of that brass is going to go and make it longer. It's just going to make the case longer as you go down in size, because that's the easiest way for the brass to flow. But a little bit of it is going to go, in upon itself and thicken itself up. So that's what you've seen here. You've seen 1/1000 to 2.25 thousandths ish growing from the forming process of going from 310 to 264 to 243. When you're turning the next, now this was one I ruined when I was setting up the press, and I want to get behind the camera and zoom in so that I can show you a ruined one. Now I'm going to zoom in, so hold on to your seats. Hopefully I can get this to focus. Okay, this is a ruined case. And it's ruined because I came down and I crashed into the shoulder. So when your cutter has a little angle on it, so it's not a sharp edge. In other words, it's not a 90 degree. It's a 45 that gives you two angles that hopefully will save some of your brass if you get too close. But this one got too close, and you can see I cut into the shoulder. So actually what happened was I made the brass super thin right at that juncture of the neck and the shoulder, so it made it ruined. So it's probably down to, say, 7/1000 or so thick. And what could happen as the brass fatigues is you could just tear that neck right off as you fire it and it fatigues. But you can see that little shiny wave that goes up. That's just the way this brass grew. Now, right there at the top, the cutter didn't cut at all, because it was thinner than the setting. Now, when you cut this, I'll get you in close and show you a little bit on the cutter. But it's not really, you know, rocket science. It's a pilot that goes inside the neck that the case runs on. That doesn't look round, but it's a delusion of the camera and the way things are. It goes on that mandrel, and that makes it run true, and then it's clamped in the back on the rim to give it some drive. And the cutter is merely a piece of carbide that comes down from the top that is controlled by very fine threads that allow you to make it whatever distance you want from the mandrel. So, like I said yesterday, there probably is a number that bench resters like, or really high-end professional reloaders, precision shooter types want to have. But we're just shooting for consistency. So we're going to take a measurement of our brass, and we're going to see what we've got for some numbers. And you saw we were up about 14 thousandths. Now, like I said yesterday, that's getting to the thick side, but it's not awful. I think anything above, say, 16 or 17 is getting way too thick. 12, 13 is probably right in the ballpark of where I'd like things to be. But given my choice, I'd rather have it a thousandths thicker than a thousandths thinner. So I'll take 13 over 10. That's what I'm saying to you. So I set the cutter. I took a piece of brass. I measured it. This one. And then I set the cutter, and I kept spinning it until I touched. Until it started to cut. And then I measured. And this is what we got when we measured this. Now I'm going to measure at my cut. I do it this way so that you guys can see. It's still going to be upside down. So there's our cut. And we are 13 thousandths. So that's what this is going to cut at. Now it's not dead precise, so it'll wander a little bit. If you've got a really big, thick cut, you may have to go over it twice to get an even. It'll cut evenly, but it won't cut consistently. You go over it a couple times. If you're cutting, say, 2 thousandths, that's a big cut. You probably shouldn't do that in one cut. It's a lot for your little bitty tool to be able to do. You want to take a half a thousandths at most at a time. So you may have to, on really bad thick brass, like some 300 blackout, because it's so short, you're into the wall of the case, it's very inconsistent for thicknesses. And sometimes I have to turn those a couple of times, different settings, to get it down to the final thickness that I want. This one was really close. It was only a thousandths or two I wanted to take off, so it was no big deal. Again, here's a close-up of the tool, and it's got a round head. Let me get in here. It's got a round head with a flat mandrel that rides on the outside of the case, and the round head runs on the inside, so it gives you an accurate measurement because you're measuring the inside of a radius. The outside doesn't matter because it's measuring the exact point where it touches. So there you go. That's pretty much what we're doing and why we're doing it in a nutshell. Well, why we're doing it is to get consistent neck tension. That's the desired result that we're looking for. And let me get the camera in here and I'll show you the cutter and I'll show you what it does. Stand by. All right, so let me get something to point with. And here we go. So here's our mandrel. This part right here. This is what the case spins on. This doesn't turn, it doesn't move. Nothing here moves. Here's our cutter. This is our carbide cutter. And there's a big screw up here at the top, up higher, that allows me to push this down or pull it up to get the thickness that I want. Then I just take the case and I put it in the tool and I put it on this mandrel like that, and it goes in there. The tool is set for how deep it goes, and you just spin it and it cuts. Whatever is too thick, it takes it off. So all that edge is all cut, starting not to need to be cut. No cut, no cut, no cut. All that edge, that front edge, is no cut. You see the band, the band where I got too close, that's all got cut. And then it started to get cut again, and we cut the full width. Now, if you look at some of our brass as we go, you'll see some of this brass hardly gets touched at all. other brass gets cut a lot. So let's look at that. Here we go. This, I think, is Winchester brass. Let's look and see. Yeah, Winchester brass. So this is all Winchester brass. And you'll notice that it's only touched in a few little spots. Like this second one here has got a few touches on the side. Just random little spots that were high that got touched. Because everything else didn't need it. See where my cut stops? Right on the neck, not on the shoulder. That's what you want. You don't want to cut into the shoulder. So there's Winchesters. And like I said, I got 25 now. And up here, this is Federal. Hold on. This is Federal. Now Federal was quite thick. Look at all the necks that got cut, and a lot of the necks that got cut full. Let me back you out a little bit so you don't get so dizzy. And I'll move this over so we can see better in better light, and then zoom back in. All right, you can see how much got trimmed on some of these cases. Or other ones, hardly at all. That back one back there got cut a lot. That back one back there, cut a little, cut a lot, a little, a little, a lot. And that shows the inconsistency that happens because the brass is different hardnesses. It moves differently with when it was sized. And this is PMC. And this one is more like Winchester. Not so much had to be cut. Just a few spots, random. There's one that got cut a lot. There's one that got cut a little bit. But there's one that hardly got cut at all. There's one that didn't get cut at all. Just touched, a little bit. So we're making them all consistent. And that's the process. That's the tool. And this one is a Hornady. But there's a lot of different ones out there. Just about every major manufacturer makes one. And this is outside neck turning. You can also ream or cut the inside of the necks. But that's not what we're doing here. That's not needed in this case. Let's not even talk about it anymore because I don't want to confuse you with things. We're just outside neck turning. And the reason for it is because we formed these from a larger caliber and we got inconsistent thicknesses. And we want to try and get good bullet release, which comes from consistent neck tension, which comes from consistent neck wall thickness. So there we go. That's the process. Everything's set now. I just got to clean these primer pockets out a little bit with a brush. And then everything is going in the tumbler to get cleaned up, to be ready to be reloaded. So that's it. God bless everybody. CW out.